Welcome to Cross-Platform Podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I'm Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and today we're going to talk about education. Not only that, we have also a guest here in the show. So we are going to welcome Dr. Frank Buck. And most people are overwhelmed by the amount of paper and digital information in their life. Frank Buck make organization easy so you can increase productivity, decrease stress, and enjoy life. Global Gurus rank Frank number one in the world in the time management category for 2019, 20, and 21. His career path took him from band director to principal to central office administrator and now productivity coach and speaker. Welcome, Dr. Buck.
All right. It's a pleasure to be here, guys. Looking forward to this one.
This is great because we planned ahead. We went and got somebody smarter than us.
I don't know about
Now,
that.
granted, that's not a real high bar for us. So, but this is great because the timing's perfect on this. We're looking school kids. Some kids are starting going back. Yeah. I'm up in the north. Augusto and I are up north. So I know our kids in the public schools in this area don't go back until almost Labor Day.
September 7 is for us.
Yeah, so some of them have a little bit of time yet, but down south, they're already starting to go back.
Some of them have been back since August the 1st. Here's the thinking. It's 100 degrees outside and the school buses are not air conditioned. So let's go ahead and, it builds endurance, I guess. Yeah.
Just little smoked sausage kiddos in there. This is, and just to give you a little context for our show here, for everybody who's new, one of the things we try to look at is when we take a topic, we try to isolate it out from specific techniques and things like that, and how you can apply and deal with this challenge across whatever you've made your platform to be. Whether it's, if you're an iOS guy like Augusto is, if you're a Chrome and Android guy and Windows guy like me, or, any of the amalgamation. And education's one of those really interesting places, I think, because you've got all those different moving parts. You have schools who have specific dictates as to what you need and what you have to have. You've got parents who have some parents who have access to things, other parents who don't, and you have the kids who have kind of get whatever they get given to do the work that's at hand. So I want to start this off with a direct question to you. When you work with somebody and you start talking to somebody about being productive in education, first, what does that mean to you? What does being productive in education actually translate to? Because I have an idea, but I'm pretty sure mine's wrong.
Realistically, and for so many of our teachers right now, being productive in education means being able to stay in it for the long haul, not burning yourself out and being another statistic where you went into some other field of work where the stress is not so great. And really, over this last year, the shift has been from we need to look a whole lot less at test scores, and we just need to look at kids and look at the adults that teach those kids and look more at the mental health side of things. It's been another dimension that this needs to be the time that we just step back and take care of ourselves and teach each other how to take care of ourselves. So that sort of productivity right now, being good to yourself, taking care of yourself so that you can be worth something to somebody else.
Now, I said earlier that I thought mine was wrong. You proved me wrong. Or actually, you proved me right that mine was wrong. Because follow the bouncing ball, it'll land someplace. My challenge is that, as a parent, now I have all my kids are grown, so I don't have anybody in school anymore. But thinking about parents with kids in school, they still operate under that mindset of, hey, we got to get the certain grades in, they've got to hit the certain measures, because it's still the same you got to get into a good school, or you got to, choose a trade and go down that path. Has there been an effort, or is there an effort, and how well is it being received to change that thinking at home?
It's a real mixed bag. From what I can see with the people I'm around and what I'm hearing from colleagues is we're looking for stability. Are we going to be in person for the whole year? Our school's going to be shut down at some point. And of course, just when we thought everything was looking good during the summer, and then here's this whole thing again. And now we're mask versus no mask, and vaccine versus no vaccine. And do we go remote? Do we go in person? Do we let everybody choose? So I think parents as well are going, yeah, whether he's at the 98th or the 96th percentile, and that's taking a little bit of the back burner right now. And we just got to get stability and get past this thing, and just get our footing back.
So what can teachers do to help parents set their kids up to, and I don't want to say succeed, because that always implies, getting the highest score, but there's an adjective out there somewhere that I am not finding, but you get where I'm going with this, to actually be making progress the way they should be making progress, or at least in a way that's healthy for them?
Well, one, I think, is look at the available technology. Just to give you an anecdote, I work with roughly 15 schools, and they sort of change from year to year, but most of them are an inner city. And I went into one where they were implementing a software program, instructional program for kids. So we did training with all of the teachers, 6th grade this period, 7th grade this period, 8th grade teachers this period, in a computer lab. And one of the things that we talked about when we got to the end of the training was, let's talk about how you're going to use this in your classroom. Tell me about what you have in the way of technology in the room. And they said, well, we've got, each of us has one computer in our classroom, and we kind of use that to keep grades and attendance on. I said, wow, okay, let's, well, tell me about computer labs. How many computer labs are in the school? And they said, well, the one we're in right now, and half the computers don't work. I said, how many kids do you have in your class? I said, well, about 30. And there were 10 computers in there. So I got to reserve the computer lab, take my kids to the computer lab, figure out what to do with 20 kids while the other 10 use the program. You know how well the program is going to be used.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the very same school, here's the situation. Every child has a Chromebook all day long. Overnight change. And overnight, it suddenly became important for everybody, regardless of your zip code, to have reliable internet access. We just went from 2020 to 2030 overnight. Yeah. So it's getting parents to realize what has changed. With the instability as far as what's happening in society, the availability of technology and what that student now has in their hands when they get home every night, for the parents to really to take advantage of that, even if they don't understand it all. And second, to make a concerted effort to start understanding, to improve their own ability to do things with technology, so that not only are kids learning, but adults learning throughout life, which is not a bad thing.
Did you mention something interesting? Because it was a change that I saw when we moved at the beginning of 2020 from Indiana to New Jersey. We came to look at the schools, find a school for the kids and all this. And that was one thing that was interesting for me on the change, on the devices, the technology, the access to certain things that kids have in New Jersey that they did not have in Indiana. And some of them I don't understand it to this day. Okay, why I have my kid is going to third grade, but then he don't get a Chromebook until he get to fourth grade. Why? Like he's using the iPad anyways, all day.
Yeah.
They not only that, they just went, okay, from a year, okay, of living in a laptop, computer, tablet, name it, okay, from first grade going up, they all were going virtual to these classes. So why we are not cutting the baloney? You see how well I did with that word? Okay, why we don't cut that and then give them a Chromebook? Start giving them.
Yeah.
Why wait?
The thinking about the older kids. When they get older, they get a Chromebook. And at the same time, we're going, gosh, it's really in the early years that you form the things that by third grade, you can predict who's going to graduate high school and who's not. By third grade, you can predict who's going to go to prison and who's not. There are those statistics out there. Now, to a certain extent, yes, there does need to be hands-on and manipulatives and as we're forming words, cat, rat, bat, to have magnetic boards with letters where I can physically grab that letter and replace it with another one. There's a lot to be said for kindergarten, first grade, but still pretty early on to have the technology. Thinking back as a principal back in 1997, and I had been a middle school junior high teacher to a middle school assistant principal, and now as an elementary principal, and getting my first real good hard look at what's happening every single day in a kindergarten classroom. And one of the big ahas to me was seeing kids as they're practicing forming their letters. And the end result of that letter may look okay. The A looks like an A should look for a 5-year-old. But when you saw the way that they formed it, you said, this isn't going to be sustainable. This is going to hold back the child's ability to have any kind of speed. And even back in 1997, I was thinking, wouldn't it be good if there was some kind of software and device where as the child is forming the letter, if the strokes aren't moving in the right direction, there's something that gives the child feedback as to, no, we need to do it this way. Or when he does form the letter the correct way, that it, maybe it lights up green. And that's the thought process I was having way back then. The kindergarten teacher, she can look over shoulders and do some little correction here or there. But how do you see what 15 or 20 or 25 are doing all at the same time? But with technology, the technology can do that and very doable.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, making me think back to my days of working with public schools and private schools. The challenge so often was budgetary decisions were driven by either what is the newest tech. If you had a strong IT lead, they wanted the newest, shiniest tech. And then they said, okay, figure out something to do with it. In rarer cases, it was, we want to do this. We need the tech to be able to do it. That was an occasional thing, but not real often. But now when we experience this entire learning from home environment, parents weren't ready. Schools weren't ready either. Nobody was ready, to be honest with you. Nobody was ready for this. But the fact that the education platform needed to now include the parents far more directly than it ever had before, and it needed to include the household infrastructure far more directly than ever before. I saw the exact same thing in the corporate space. So many people struggled in the early months of doing this because they just did not have the infrastructure necessary to support the work that they were going to do. Yeah. And with education, parents have always counted on, hey, the school's going to give you a computer. The school's going to take care of it. They're going to provide you the connection. You're going to use their software and all that. And then all of a sudden, this flipped it on its head and said, guess what? If you don't have good internet at home, you're not doing your schoolwork. Well, now this is my problem as a parent. Yes, it absolutely is. The breadth of that platform now crossed the barriers of the school responsibilities and the school walls to include people that honestly were never prepared for it.
Absolutely.
And who caught the brunt of that? The teachers, because they were caught in the middle. Still are caught in the middle.
Still, and I laugh at our school. I mean, there was problems as every other school probably in the planet. And the parents, the level of frustration. And I was like, people, like your world went upside down and you were working and now trying to figure it out how to do your work in a completely different way. The same thing is happening to these teachers. Their world, they move from trying to teach or from teaching the kids and knowing how to read these kids to now going to, you need to turn the camera on. No, you need to stay in the camera. Please do not turn your camera off. Okay. And trying to teach. Not only that, some of these teachers, they were incredible teachers, but they were not technologists. They didn't know how to use more than the basic things of the technology. And now they found themselves living in Google Classroom and assigning classrooms and all these things that they didn't know how to do. And no, nobody was ready or prepared or tools for any of that.
This is, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it varied so much from teacher to teacher. Those teachers who were very tech savvy and they came from homes where the parents were tech savvy, they were already using plenty of technology in the classroom and they were turning in assignments electronically. They were being graded and returned electronically. And for people like that, it was a quick and easy shift that, okay, we're now doing the same thing from home. But for the teacher who had really been pencil and paper, where what they were doing was so similar to what they did as a student decades ago, and technology was just kind of like a little ornament that hung on the Christmas tree. Yeah, it was just an ornament that we added. That's where they had the hard time, that they suddenly now are having to shift. And another challenge is that teacher who really had the high standards, and we want teachers to have the high standards, that every child is going to turn in their homework, that they were trying to reach every child. And now they can't even get every child to log on. And teachers who say, I'm afraid to say this, but I've got kids I have not seen all year long.
Oh, I know that's very much the
those were terrible.
A good phone number. We don't have a way to reach them. So we do the best with the kids who log on and can stay with us, realizing that we want the kid to log on and we want his sister to log on to her class. But there's only one computer in the family. How can they both log on?
Right. Yeah. See, this is it in a nutshell. The fact that, and when we talk about cross-platform and we talk about these kinds of limitations, this is where everything goes off the rails and people struggle because of exactly that. How do you if you have 3 kids at home and all of them need to be logged on at the same time doing their classes in an optimal environment where they all have machines, that's great. The question is, do you have bandwidth to support 3 video streams in a house at one time?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
And that's where I was going to go, because that was the other problem I saw. Okay. In my household, there may or may not be enough screens. We are not admitting or denying anything. Okay. So kids were fine. But I saw another household friend of ours that now they were calling and say, I cannot find a device. What can I do to get my kid online? Because also we forget there was then no laptops, no Chromebooks, nothing available. Okay. So there is a second problem. Then it came to bandwidth. People were having bandwidth to, watch TV at night on one device, maybe 2, maybe 3. And now you are having one device per kid, plus your laptop, plus your husband laptop, plus the cell phones, and now the networks are crashing at home.
And we're not talking about, this is where a lot of people lose the perspective because they're not dug into the technology, but we're talking about homes that maybe have 12 megabit download speeds, maybe 25 if they're generous. Well, schools, they're putting in, if they're well funded, they're putting in T1 lines.
Yes.
They're putting in gigabit Ethernet. I mean, they're putting in high speed to handle the volume. The house is not designed to handle the volume. So then the press comes back, well, why aren't you in class? Well, because I sit there and the screen's frozen. Well, whose responsibility does that become to manage and maintain all that? And then you get into the questions, and I'd like you to dig into this a little bit. What do I use? Do I use what the school gave me? Do I go out and get my own? If I do, what should I get? How should I make that decision? I mean, parents who aren't comfortable with that normally, up until this point, they've been making those decisions because tech in school is not a new thing. But now they're obligated. If their kid's going to finish class, they have to have that tech available. What do you tell them?
I wish there was an easy answer to that. As far as making recommendations to parents for what kinds of things to have at home, very few teachers and very few principals are going to be able to make the recommendation of, you need this in the way of an internet connection. You need it, they're just kind of lucky if they have that at their own home. So unless you're talking to the tech coordinator at that school system, you're likely not to get those kinds of answers. And of course, and then the answer, it differs so much from community to community. There are places where there's not reliable internet connection because it's just so far out in the boonies that dial-up and we've still got that sort of thing. And so what school systems have done is actually taken school buses and converted them into portable hotspots and parked school buses at particular locations. Teachers who long before COVID, who were saying, well, this software program that we can use at home, well, I don't have internet connection at home. And the best teachers have been the ones who said, we got to reframe this. We cannot ask the question, who has internet access and who doesn't. We must ask the question, how do you have internet access? So does your next door neighbor, and when you're going over to play basketball, can you also get on their internet for a while? Does grandmother down the street, does the church in their fellowship center, do they have some computers? Can you go to the public library, which is usually not a bad thing for a lot of. And one teacher that said, I tell my kids, take your phone down to Target and log on to their Wi-Fi. Hey, because the kids have got phones. They may not. That may be the only connectivity they had pre-COVID, but kids who didn't have anything else, they had phones.
Yeah, and this is where I kind of get a little bit upset with some of the responses that are given to parents and to teachers and all, because often from a technology standpoint, it's given almost from a privileged point of view that we have. I'm sitting here, I've got gigabit data here in the house. I have no hesitation to be able to use that. And I know I'm in a very small sliver of people who has that.
Yes.
So for me to say that, hey, why aren't your kids getting on the internet? I have no reason to be able to say that because I don't know their situation. The technologists in the schools have to play a much more involved role outside the school now. It's literally make or break. If those kids aren't able to leverage the technology necessary to complete the classes, that's on them as much as it is the parents, the teachers, and everybody else.
Yeah.
And they've been able to hide in the computer in the server room for a long time. And I think now they have to very much come from the forefront.
Yeah.
stand up there and say,
And it's really, really interesting what you said, because we had a problem that when the school was having connection, so parents start coming with ideas, and parents start bringing hotspots to school to test and to solve the problems. And the principal and mom say, hold on, people. I cannot solve this problem in 27 different ways because I cannot maintain this. So let me solve it in one and try to standardize it. Because if you give me 27 different solutions, even if the 27 solutions work, I can maintain this. And
absolutely, yeah.
So, and then bring to the next issue that for me is the worst. Now you are teaching as a teacher the kid, or trying to teach the kid with all these challenges that we have, and then you have the mother or the father sitting next to it, I'm going to say trying to help the teacher with the education. That is not exactly, but I want to not lose. I don't want to get explicit label in this podcast. So I'm going to say trying to help the teacher instead of backing up. Let the kid do, the kids go to school and they need to deal with the teacher for good or for bad. Back off. Let them figure it out. But instead, we saw that, and I laugh in some of these things I was able to experience. The teacher saying, hey, so and so, please let me work with the student. This is between the student and the teacher. Please do not get involved.
Yeah, often the parents can be more of a detriment than a help when it comes to trying to explain some of the content to it.
They can be, yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the challenges and the problems, but what I also want people to be able to come away with this, or with this, is as they're starting to look at this coming year, and it is apparently still going to be a year of uncertainty. I'm looking to you for some recommendations on ways and things that parents can either look into, students can look into on their own in some cases, to help them with some of the mechanical parts of the educational process. Specifically, I've got two off the top of my head, and I'm sure Augusto can come up with some more. One is around note-taking, and the second one is around time management, because I know that's really a challenge for some students. So based on what you've seen in your interactions with schools and with teachers and parents, is there anything that you can recommend, whether it be an actual thing or a method or a methodology or something that they could add into their platform to help them improve their note-taking and improve their time management?
Well, of course, let's start with time management. So many of our schools are Google Classroom schools, where it used to be the organized student was the one who had that student paper planner. And that is still a good tool, very viable tool. And as soon as the teacher made an assignment, it went there so that there was one place to look. And that was so important, that there was that one place where everything was trapped. That's Google Classroom, where we can look at our Google Calendar, even though we're in 3rd grade or 5th grade. And there are the assignments. There is the one place to look. So with teachers getting better at using that, parents getting more adept at what to look for, how to look at their child's Google Calendar, just like they used to look at their child's planner. And the students being able to go, here's what I have. I will know when I'm done, when these things are done and they're submitted. And if I have a phone, I can see it on my phone. If I have a phone that doesn't even have a data plan, but I've got access to Wi-Fi, then that old phone that mama used to have that doesn't have any data plan anymore because she got a new phone, I can use it just fine to see my assignments. And then, note taking. We've been dealing with digital documents for a long time. Before that, in the days of the typewriter, we had documents and we had notes. Grandma understood that. The recipes were on note cards. Never going to have to type it out anywhere. It was in. She wanted to be able to get the information onto something quickly, be able to organize it quickly, be able to retrieve it quickly, and note cards was the answer. When the church was going to put together a cookbook, that's when she hauled out the typewriter and put everything that needed to go on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Well, when desktop computers came out, it was so that we could save a document and then change that document without having to retype the whole thing. So what we were given were documents, and we've been dealing with that for decades now. And so many people, everything that's digital is a digital document, whether it needs to be printed on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper or not. Now I think we're beginning to understand. Of course, some of us have understood for 10 years, but more of us are understanding now there's a difference between a digital document and digital notes, things that don't need a page break, where you just need to be able to search for those. I think in schools, we're way behind on those for most kids who are taking notes digitally. It's a Google Doc, and that's not bad, but they're better alternatives when you've got OneNote that's built for that, or you've got Google Keep. When people say, why do you need Evernote or OneNote? Why do you need a note-taking thing? Why don't you just do Google Docs? And I say, well, if Google Docs was fine, there wouldn't be Google Keep.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Good point.
Good point.
Yeah. So the opportunity to have a good note-taking system, to have Evernote or OneNote, will prove valuable beyond means down the road. You take American history, and several years from now, you're going to take American history again. What if you still had those notes and they were searchable? What we'd find is, for that 50-year-old, if they had access to their 8th grade American history notes, we would look at them as like an expert on American history. The Teapot Dome scandal, man, they're telling you about it. Yeah. The advantages of this versus that, and what scandal happened here, and the 5 points of the treaty of whatever year it was. Man, in 3 seconds, they're looking at them. How many of us can do that? We're having to do a Google search. They'd have it right there in their notes. And people that have been an important part of their life. One of the things I've done the last several years is, when there's even somebody I have an important conversation with, I've just met them, but I think, this person may become an important part of my life. I create a note in Evernote, put their name on it. What were the kids' names? What's their email address? Just a few things. What was the conversation about? Just date it. And then next time we have a conversation, that goes just above the last conversation. So I've got running conversations bottom up. And to be able to have that person on the phone and look at a glance and see that, oh man, 6 months ago when we talked, his father died 6 months ago. I forgot all about that. But to be able to mention something about, how are you doing now? Mm-hmm. None of us are smart enough to remember all that we know, but to have that repository that never forgets, that can be so powerful, and we can start building it so early.
Yeah, there's an amazing impact of learning to capture early and learning to capture all the time and trusting a system. Yes. And it doesn't have to be anything complex. It can be something as simple as Apple Notes on your iPhone. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the mechanism and the mindset that there is value to capture that makes a huge
Correct.
Impact on long-term, lifelong learning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to spin this a little bit, though. We have a generation now that is a highly video, highly multimedia focused generation, our TikTok generation. Yeah. And they are, when I think about the generation prior to them, they were very much about consuming content. They watched their YouTube, things like that. This is now a generation of content creators.
Mhm.
Where are we seeing a shift within the educational platform to take advantage of those skills that these kids are developing outside the classroom? I mean, they're getting good at video content and editing and audio and all the mechanisms as part of that communication process.
Mhm.
Is this something that we need to, as parents and as teachers and as administrators, really look at as now being an established part of this platform that they're developing?
I think to a certain extent, for the most part, it's entertainment and being seen as being cool and with it. For the superintendent that makes a little video, okay, we've got a snow day, so you see him outside in the snow on the sled and so forth and so on. And the bottom line after watching the video is we're out of school today because it's snowing. He could have just told us that, but it was cool to watch him do it. Well, how long did he spend making the thing? So there is a certain element of doing it to be seen as being cool, and then for others, it's the ability to really take things to a deeper level and to do something, and then the challenge be to the students, tell me how I did that.
Mhm.
Could you now go and do what you just saw your principal do? Well, what kind of software do you use? How did you do that part? Tell us, how did you make this happen? And then that's where the learning really happens. I don't think we need to out student the students. Okay. They're all over TikTok and
that's
that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Once upon a time, we were all over MySpace. Of course,
Right.
Because MySpace is going to be here forever.
Well, right. I think there is a bit of a difference there. We're talking about a platform versus a media type, but with this mindset, I mean, having taught public speaking for a while, there's that challenge and that fear of speaking in front of a group that can be avoided through a video medium. But I think also it opens that door, that classic, it eliminates that classic sage on the stage mindset of the only person who knows how to do anything in the room is the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers, I think, are starting to accept the fact that, guess what? These kids they've got it better figured out than we do. Can we leverage that? I have a friend who's a history teacher, and during their work from home, one of the things he did each day is he recorded a little 5-minute blip for each morning. It wasn't fancy. I mean, it was usually just him sitting on his deck, but he knew that would connect with a certain group within his class, that they would look at it, they would see. And from a slightly different perspective, you can actually get a better sense of engagement because you can use the same principles that you use for, YouTube and SEO and things like that to see, are they looking at it? How long are they looking at it? Where are they dropping off? And be able to tune the message within that. Now, I'm talking about things that are very nuanced at a technical level, which unfortunately many teachers just don't have exposure to. So I then go back to those technical leads within the schools and the school districts and all, saying, look, you really have to step your game up and get this information in front of these teachers because they have content and they have a much greater challenge to deal with. And the kids are creating content and can share it with each other. They're going to do that anyway, whether you're part of the platform or you're looking at it from the outside. Mm-hmm. So I find that interesting as we look at this evolution. You brought up something that I wrote down, talking about the Google Classroom part of the equation. I find it interesting because to me, that's one of the initial tripping points. And it's not the fault of Google Classroom. Many parents, when they work in a white collar environment or an information focused environment, don't use Google. They use Microsoft. So they know how to use the Microsoft platform, not the Google platform. So immediately there's a barrier. And the base concepts are similar, but not enough to the point where you can do it smoothly or, as a parent, comfortably.
Right.
So that becomes,
let me take that one step forward, because that was the problem we had in school. There was, okay, this is need to happen. We're jumping to Google Classroom, and then now you have every teacher using their own system, their own will. So you look, in my case was second and fifth grade. The second grade teacher was doing it in a way. The fifth grade teacher were doing it in a completely different way. Add two more kids to that equation, and you go crazy as a parent. Okay. And when I went to school, and I talked to the second grade teacher, and we came with a standard at the end of the day. Thanks to the principal. The principal accept the help, and we create a standard for the school, pass it to all the teachers, and things improve. But there was so much stuff happening right there that not the teachers, not the principals had the time to digest how to make that better, how to create a standard. So everybody was looking at the same. And it was creating even more chaos than the chaos we already had, with now we are going remote and all this.
Yeah.
And
that will evolve just as it
I
did
hope
in the pencil and paper world, where especially in middle schools where the kids got 7 different teachers, or even in elementary school where you've got 3 different children in different teachers' classrooms, and parents are pulled every way for Sunday. For example, a middle school where I taught, they said, we don't want kids having to study for 4 tests on one night. How do we solve this dilemma? So they said, okay, well, let's do this. We'll make math Monday, science Tuesdays, social studies Wednesday. That'll be the day for those tests. Now, that's not to say that's the only day you can give it, but if you're a math teacher and Monday is your day and you really need to give the test on Thursday, just check with the teacher who's giving that test on, that's their day.
Right.
See if we can swap, or are they giving a test, so that kids weren't having to study for 4 or 5 tests every Friday, because Friday's test day. So just getting people to talk to each other to say, let's come up with some procedures that we'll just agree that we all follow. In pencil and paper, do you put in the upper right corner your name and the teacher and the date, or your name and the date and the teacher? It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's the same for the first period teacher, second period teacher, third period teacher, because then it builds. When the first period teacher says, here's how you'll head your paper, and they go in on the first day of school to the second period teacher who says, here's how you'll head your paper. By the time they get to third period, you don't even need to tell them how to head their paper. That concept has already been taught. And in middle schools, in the good middle schools, teachers are always working on what can we do? What are those procedures where it doesn't matter if you do A or B or C? What's important is it's consistent. And let's just decide how we're all going to do it. Like one brand new middle school where the principal said, now when the bell rings, kids aren't going to get it. You're going to say, have a nice day. And the teachers went, well, so first period, kids sit down. Have a nice day. Second period, bell rings at the end. Fewer kids jump up. That's not how we do it. Have a nice day. At the end of the day, the teacher said this thing works. And when a substitute, when that school would have a substitute and the bell would ring to go to the next class, the little pretty girl in the front row would say, when nobody got up to go anywhere, and the substitute's going, what? And the bell just rang. Why the kid? You're supposed to say, have a nice day. The kid, and when you get together on some of those procedures, it makes it work better for everybody. And so some of the little hiccups that we're seeing now with the world of technology, those are going to be worked out. Just a little time, and it'll be just as smooth as how to head your paper.
So as we get towards the end of our time today, for the people who are involved in the platform, which are the administrators, the teachers, the parents, the student is the ultimate benefactor and also user of the platform. What would be one piece of advice that you could give all of them when they're looking ahead at the coming uncertainty that we have, and even when things calm down, because at some point they will? What's one thing that you could give them to take away from to make them feel a little bit better?
Just do a lot of listening. This is kind of like the Wild West. It's the frontier. We don't know what the future is going to hold, but if we're working together, there's so much infighting going on right now, but the teachers don't have all the answers. The parents don't have all the answers. The principals don't have all the answers. And when you find a guy who's got all the answers, I guarantee you his answers are wrong.
Or he's selling you something.
Or he's selling you something.
Exactly. To just, in education, we've got to pull together and just go, we're going to make some mistakes. We're going to make some mistakes together. And then we'll go and make different mistakes. We'll get better as we go, so that, 10 years from now, people look back on this time and go, that they were dealt a pretty sorry hand there for several years. But look what they did with it, and we are better off because of it. So, each of us can be the naysayer and, sit in the cheap seats and just kind of chunk the peanuts, or we can say, tell me how to help. Tell me how to help. Mm-hmm. And I'm all there. And if you're doing the best you can with what you have, I got your back. And you can say that if you got a PhD, and you can say that if you dropped out of high school before you ever got a diploma, but you want better for your own kids.
I couldn't agree with you more there. I think you hit it right on the head.
I agree.
So, thank you so much for joining. I wish we could take like days to dig in this, and we want you to come back in the future as we go through some other topics. But for everybody listening who has really gotten into what you're talking about, how can they follow Dr. Buck more?
Okay. Come over to my website, frankbuck.org. I come out with one piece of content a week, new blog post. That's also a little podcast, a YouTube video. So if first of all, you go to that website, check out what's there. You've got 15 years of blog posts so far. Don't try to watch them all at the same time. But then also do get on my email list, and you'll see a little area where little button you can click right there on the homepage, so that every week you get an email from me saying, hey, here's the new piece of content that I wrote this week. Here's a link right to it. And then plus, little things that I'm reading and I think that other people would find value of. I'll include two or three of those things every week, so that everybody's not having to find all these things on their own. So would love to have you.
That's fantastic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Buck. As Art says, we can continue this discussion, and we will bring you back to continue this discussion because
I love it. Yeah.
Schools and education, it is a place where this concept of cross-platform is key, because you have not only the technology the school have, but the technology the parents have, the technology the kids have, plus the technology the teachers and principals have. So it is really a menace of technology. So this concept, it is really, really important. So,
some point we'll get you to tell us which is better, iPad or Chromebook. Just saying, that's coming.
So that's coming. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you. Well, follow us where you like to listen podcast, like us or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can also interact with us on PersonalProductivity.club, and you will find there the cross-platform channel, and you will be able to communicate with us, chat with us, and more. We are Augusto Pinaud and Art Gelwicks, and see you next time